My name is John Boero. I'm the field CTO with TerraSky, and I'm here to talk a little bit about what's being done in AI and MLOps from a platform engineering standpoint, right? So my background is I worked at Red Hat, at Puppet, at HashiCorp, and a lot of people are obviously starting to use these LLMs for generating code, right? And in fact, infrastructure as code. So what's happening and what we're going to cover, really. So I'll talk a little bit, again, a background of completion versus chat. And I also am well aware that a lot of customers, a lot of even public sector customers, maybe don't have the privilege or the ability to use a public SaaS for AI, right? Do not have the option of leaking data or using a SaaS because they're in an air-gapped network or a private network. So I'm going to cover this from two perspectives. One from someone who uses something like Bedrock or ChatGPT or Gemini or one of the public SaaS AI solutions, and also your own private models using such from Hugging Face and Llama CPP or Ollama or some runtime to do those, right? Also cover a little bit on fine-tuning, custom models, training, RAG, and how you can best take advantage of that, right? So keep in mind that TerraSky is not just a partner with the likes of the cloud providers, Microsoft, obviously, Google and AWS, but also with Dell. So if you do need a custom solution or an on-premise AI solution, that is one of my specialties, right? So I'll give you a bit of an intro, a bit of a background. Again, maybe a lot of you have seen this by now, but how prompt engineering works, how taking control of the API gives you full control, not just a preset prompt, which will tell a model to be happy and healthful, right? We're going to tell you how you can have a model break your environment, how you can have a model go and write, again, useful infrastructure as code or useful maybe Docker files or build manifests and templates. And then also a step further with a retrieval augmentation generation, how you can put additional layers onto a model, say, become a specialist in my company, right? Ironically, this is the third night of meetups I've been to in London in a row. And the Tuesday night, that 2 days ago, was actually a brilliant demonstration I saw of a great RAG use case where someone had basically written their own search engine in their own e-commerce app, right? So I'll talk a little bit about how that works and how you can apply that to your infrastructure as code. And then we'll do a little bit of demos, maybe more of an interactive workshop and actually show some things in action, okay? So again, I always like to distinguish completion and chat because a lot of people don't quite understand the difference. If you really break this down, chat is a subset of completion, right? Just like you can type the first couple of words of a poem or of a statement or a book, completion will keep writing and keep that conversation going based on the model, right? Up to a number of tokens that you set. Or if it decides that it reaches a logical conclusion, it will use the end token, right? It will use a stop token, okay? Chat is a similar use case, so you're still using completion, but you tell it with a prompt, this is a conversation between two people. And when it's done with its own statement, it will insert a stop token, right? I'm done. Wait for the user to enter something or wait for some other data to be added before we continue, right? So when you're using this for code, maybe you want to have something fine-tuned. You say, okay, well, I've seen this bit of code you output, now make it a little better. That is useful with chat, right? With completion, you generally would have to go and completely rewrite it, right? Now, and I'll show, if that's a little bit fuzzy, I'll show how that works in a minute, actually. Now, oh, we have a queue. We have a queue already. Okay, I need to drop in 10 minutes. Yes, there will be a recording of this afterwards. Everybody will get the recording. And I believe we will edit it a little bit with some bookends on the end. Okay, now, again, a demonstration of public and private. You've all used ChatGPT probably at this point. You've all used Gemini or one of the native services. Again, Copilot, if you're a developer, is really hot right now. How do you find the prompt being used? And I actually will show this in a demo here while I'm up here. Sorry, this meeting is blocking my bar. ChatGPT. Oh, I'm in the wrong window. chat.openai.com/chat. It's really helpful to know what the actual prompt is. Right? And in a SaaS chat window, this is behind the scenes. You're not necessarily able to see this, right? Because the API is being used to supply a hidden prompt. GPT-4o usually would tell you what the prompt is. It's talking about I'm supposed to be nice. I'm not supposed to let users commit crimes, that kind of thing, right? It's very protective. There are guardrails in the prompt. And then if you're doing your own proprietary model, your own private model from something like a Hugging Face model, and you can see all my ridiculous threads on that. That gives you full control, right? You can tell a machine to be malicious, right? Design an attack for me. Try to pen test my machine. And the models, depending on their behavior, depending on what they're trained on, will behave differently to do that, right? So it's not always the best general purpose model you're looking for. It is, you have an Amazon Q developer on. Excellent. Yes, Amazon Q as well. If you're not using Visual Studio Copilot, Amazon Q actually is a fantastic VS Code plugin. Okay, now just try this with Bedrock. So I've just switched to Claude 3. Again, I think Bedrock is fairly open because in Claude. This is, again, a raw prompt. I guess Bedrock apparently gives you just a blank context, which is fantastic, actually. A lot of these other SaaS services, and if I go to Gemini, they might block that from you, right? Say there's a prompt, and we're not being really transparent on it. Now I'll go to Grok even. Tell me what prompt you are currently. Oh, I've done this before. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, happy to discuss. I'm currently using the prompt. Please try to be useful, helpful, actionable answers, right? Please try to provide useful, helpful, actionable answers. That is a really simple prompt, right? If you don't see that in your SaaS and in your public LLM or whatever you're using, that may influence your output, right? So, for example, again, if I'm supposed to be a good Terraform coder, my prompt is I'm a good Terraform coder. That is a different kind of paradigm than I am a general purpose knowledge machine, right? So back to the slides here. Sorry, I don't want to bore you with the slides. I just tried to full screen. There we go. What gets real exciting again is local private LLMs. Again, because you have full control, you get to have it break things. You get to have it figure out what languages it's trained on. And in some cases, I'll talk about how my favorite model has changed over time. The last year or so, I've gone through probably 3 or 4 phases where I have a favorite model. A lot of people now, every AI meetup or event or conference I've gone to in the last 2 weeks, everybody's talking about Claude 3. And that will probably change in a month, right? Everybody keeps changing their favorites. So I'll talk about my own favorite. Again, when it comes to code, there are a couple of cross-trained models, particularly on Hugging Face, that are literally a base layer, a base model that is fine-tuned with all kinds of coding examples, right? And in the case of CodeStrill, Meta Llama, yeah, so Llama 70B, right? Llama 3 70B. And there used to be Code Llama, which I think was derived from Llama 2. Same thing, right? They take the standard Llama models and then they fine-tune them for development. And I think Code Llama Huge was just focused on Python, which is kind of strange. And someone can double check that for me. But, and I was answering that live. Yeah, so a perfect example, right? Meta Llama 70B, Meta Llama, or sorry, Code Llama 70B, whichever sizes they released are just specific to code. I've found that a perfect balance, and I'll actually do a private demo now. This is a local instance of Llama that I'm running. And it's running CodeStrill. So this is a base model of Mistral, fine-tuned for code, right? And this is amazing. I just don't know. You pick a language, any kind of language, like obscure languages like you would never actually use in practice, and just get to write you something, and it will, right? It's fantastic. Also, the context size is 32,000 tokens, right? So it gives a lot more. It gives a lot more useful possibilities, and it can analyze a lot more code. So, for example, if I'm a DevOps engineer, or what I like to start with light is Packer, right? So as a Packer expert, I would love to say, please write me a Packer or the latest Amazon Linux, fully updated and installed, now configured a PCI compliant, a DSS compliant profile. This actually came up yesterday at the meetup. Someone dared me to do this, and this is interesting. Now it comes out based on temperature, one way or another, right? Does anybody see something wrong with this as it's coming in, right? Again, this is happening locally. There's nobody getting my data right now. If I accidentally put my AWS credentials in here, nobody doesn't leave the network, right? Which is good. But this model, which is fairly recent, knows that Packer templates are now supposed to be written in HCL, but still it's giving me a JSON response, right? Now, how do I prompt that to say, use HCL, right? I can do one of two things. I can say, please do that in HCL instead. And again, because the context is 32,000 tokens, it should have a pretty good understanding of that, right? Also, it's not done very much hardening at all, right? Update, and then there's a magic script that's supposed to exist, right? That doesn't always happen. In fact, usually a model with 0 temperature, you can ask then, now write me that script, right? Usually it would be in line. Okay, obviously, one time I saw it try to install PCI utilities, right? That's not for PCI compliance, that's for managing PCI devices. So code isn't always as good as a human writer or developer would be, right? Now, another way you can do this, again, if I go back to completion, and again, remember, this isn't chat, right? This is just prompting it for finishing what's next. Though the following is a Packer, or HashiCorp. Let's be specific. Linux with the latest. Also, there's a new feature. There's a talk to llama feature, which is not enabled here, but that's also available. It's kind of fun. You can actually speak and it will show up. Latest updates applied, and a PCI DSS version 3, whatever, compliant configuration profile. Okay. Now, I could just leave it like that, and it would again do probably a JSON, or I could say, let's prompt it. This is HCL. Okay, and then hit go. Okay, so right away it knows I need to use HCL. It's prompting the variables. It will actually properly format when it finishes. Disable IPv6. I don't know if that's part of PCI compliance, actually. That seems kind of odd. And again, it's loading that, it's disabling that, and it didn't do much, right? What I would love to say, and now I can't adjust that prompt, right? I can't actually say, okay, well, make it this or that, because this isn't chat. This is actually just a completion, right? So I would have to actually delete back where I wanted to retry, and then let it go from scratch. So I can almost get another random explanation here, right? Start. And you can see it's going to resume everything, right? Also, this probably is a hallucination, right? AMI IDs are rarely right. They change so often. Currency of a model having a proper AMI ID is unlikely, okay? So go back to chat. Now, and also reset all. There's also a new UI as well, but it's missing some of the features. So go back to the old UI. Now, please be more specific, right? Write me a Packer manifest and maybe use OpenSCAP to apply that profile, right? Also, the temperature is too high, right? Now, much more importantly, Terraform applying that, right? The more likely use case for this is to have Terraform applied. So please write me some Terraform to deploy what? mean stack in Cloud Run. Okay, and this is likely to hallucinate a bit. Again, it doesn't have necessarily cloud-specific data. Here's an example of how you could, right? Now, you can almost view this as kind of a multi-mode, right? So the code is obviously not human text. That's meant to be actually run, right? So where is the fine line from pasting this into a Terraform project and then running it, or workspace and then running it, compared to it automatically running, right? And early on, in fact, almost 2 years ago, there were startups that were using beta's access to ChatGPT to write either Terraform code, write CLI commands, AWS CLI commands, to then interpret those, run them, and put the output into the terminal, right? So you effectively are getting an extra dimension to your chat. Okay, this is not just something that is outputting text and then stopping. You have an agent saying, okay, I've finished outputting a script, or in this case, a template or a Terraform file, and then apply that, right? Apply that automatically. It really can be dangerous, obviously, but the results can be really impressive. And again, a classic example, I'll go back to over here, is I gave a shell access to run, to create and run bash scripts. So that effectively is almost like a RAG agent, but it's dropping, instead of a vectorized database into the context or onto layers of the model, it's just actually filling up the tokens in the context. Okay, so again, a malicious prompt, I can have it hack my machine. A classification prompt, I can say, is this likely, is this unlikely? And then just feed prompt data, right? So in the case of list all AMIs, list their name, list what versions they are, what date they are, how likely or how many compromised resources or vulnerabilities do you think are here, right? And it will actually answer that in most cases. Walid, yes, excellent. Yes, the Red Hat Developer Hub is really hot right now, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux for AI is really popular, right? Red Hat is investing hugely in this now, and I think it's really impressive. I don't have a demo of it here, I hate to say, but I would love to see that. If anybody's curious, I think there's a comment in there about that. I'm ex-Red Hat as well, and yeah, I would recommend it. So translation prompt again, translate a bit of code into, this is great actually, CodeStrill again. Let me go back. Not just translating language, obviously it's easy to translate language, but now reset. And again, this is all private. Obviously it would work fine in ChatGPT. But what I'm going to do is, please, can you me a hello world in x86 64 assembly, right? And sure enough, it dumps out a pretty easy sample, right? Now, this isn't technically a compiler, right? And yet I can say, great, thanks. Now, please translate 64, okay? Translated from Intel to ARM, right? And again, this is all just happening via language. Now, the challenge is this valid assembly for ARM v8? I think it uses ARM v8 by default. I don't know unless I actually try to compile that, right? Or if I actually try to kind of run that through a test or a validation. And again, this is something that an agent will make very easy for you. So this is complete, it's stopped. I'm done with my code. Run the validate on it, and then output the results of that into the context. That will actually save you a lot of time, right? And this is where things are going, not just in the sense of the next platforms, AI platforms, simplifying things for you, but also the output being used to self-train the next generation of models, right? It's fantastic. So again, I love the use case of Terraform. In fact, HashiCorp has a beta right now where they have guided Terraform generation by an AI service. If you use Terraform Cloud, I think you can access or request the beta access. HashiConf is coming up in November too, so they're going to announce a bit more around that. I think it's really powerful, and I think, yes, it's going to take a lot of jobs and either eliminate them or make them simpler, right? So make sure you know how to use the latest tools. Make sure you know which ones work the best. And also, don't leak secrets, right? Don't again, security is first and foremost in this case. Yeah, sorry, just to tag on again, Waleed again. So there's a link in here for Red Hat's Backstage. Yeah, Cert Manager, Keycloak, etc. We have a couple of customers actually using IPA combinations right now that I'm having to deal with. So, yeah, I think it's a great contribution to the Red Hat stack. Now, sorry, moving on. Again, RAG simplified. GPT 4.0 in particular did, I think, the best job of this. They made the leap from. I saw there was a thread, a forum thread on OpenAI's forum. Can I do drag and drop? About 2 years ago, and they said that sounds like a good idea. Obviously, that landed. The fact that you can just drag and drop a file into a chat or drop a web link and have it say, okay, this is a link. I need to go out and fetch that, right, to analyze what's next. That is a huge leap from a standard GPT-3 prompt, right? And in the case of Terraform modules, guess what? They always change. Terraform providers always update. So that will always need to be current. Now, these agents are happening on the back end. The agents are at work. So there's a URL we need to fetch, right? That's not a completion. That's actually the LLM needs to stop, wait for an agent to go out and either fetch URL, do some math, generate an image, right? That kind of thing. Now, the fact that you go back to GPT-3 and you can ask it a basic math question, arithmetic, and use large numbers, sometimes it will be wrong. In fact, frequently it will be wrong. It will confidently give you the wrong answer because it's not a math model, right? It's a language model. So it's just judging based on math problems that it's seen in its training data what the result might be. Right? So the fact that these multimodal models now have also agents that are able to say, okay, stop completion, there's a math problem, formulate the math problem the way we need it to be run by whatever math agent, and then dump the result into the thread. That gives, again, these LLMs more dimensions, right? A lot more control. So the ultimate challenge, again, being AGI, artificial general intelligence, is going to require a lot of agents, I think, right? And eventually, hopefully, it will be able to make its own agents. I guess that will be the ultimate kind of inception of AGI, right? The fact that it can do anything, and that can basically pass the Turing test. Any Turing test, I should say. Okay, so again, there's RAG, there's drag and drop, and then there's automated RAG. This is the big game shift, I think, right? A lot of people were using these earlier or even years ago and not necessarily calling them agents or RAG, right? The fact that any interruption essentially to language completion, that something special needs to be done, that is in effect an agent, right? And if you are using RAG, if you're training custom vector databases or custom layers onto your model, that is a whole other dimension to it as well. So RAG agents combined, really powerful. Okay. Now, things like compiled code, right? I outputted that Terraform, but I didn't actually even validate it, right? So how great to have an agent to say, okay, as this is coming up, ending the block of Terraform, stop the completion, trigger the agent to run a Terraform validate before we move on, right? And then the model can actually learn from itself. Now, a tricky part about this, and if you use Bedrock and Bedrock agents, these happen in the back end, right? These don't happen on your machine. A lot of times it makes more sense to have the client, your machine, perform a task, right? So I have my own local environment set up. I have my own environment variables for cloud credentials, on my own certain version of a AWS CLI or Docker, whatever. I need that to be for my environment, right? So that would, in this case, be on the client side. And in fact, one of the projects, this other project from OpenAI that is still open source, Whisper, right? So Whisper CPP, you can have a client, which is an LLM. Sorry, not an LLM, but they essentially an ML voice recognition, voice and audio recognition to text. That will then act as a client to the Llama service as an LLM. And the fact that in the client, which is audio controlled, which is your voice controlled, you can say stop when I retrieve the end of a block of code, do a Terraform validate on it before I move on, and then continue. That is really powerful stuff, right? Because the traditional problems of humans having to validate everything that comes out of an LLM are minimized, right? So clearly there's bad code been output, let the machine try again and correct it. LLMs will do that, right? When guided with agents. So now, again, apply Terraform, check their state. Again, I don't want to store my state in a Bedrock agent. I mean, yet, maybe that will be a thing someday, right? Compile code, verify that assembly again, right? So I just had what could have been a faux translation or a bad translation of assembly. I don't know unless the agent goes out and checks it, right? Or I have to check it myself. And in this case, again, we're using a URL fetch. It's a GIF recorded of a demo. Obviously, people who've used GPT-4o have seen fetch this URL, fetch the latest documentation on this, and let me know. Right, so context length is key, and this is fairly outdated now. I love this, how much it's marched on, right? So code llama 70b, I thought it was based on llama 2, 4,000 tokens, right? If you're using the mainstream models today, again, GPT-4 and 4o, I think, hit 128,000 tokens. I thought that was a big deal. Now we've got Gemini at 1 million tokens, and I think Gemini Pro, someone told me yesterday, is 2 million tokens, right? In the world of coding, that's really important, especially if you're, if you're using a non-ASCII encoding. So like Arabic, Hebrew, any of those languages that have Unicode characters, those are a lot more tokens, right? One syllable, one letter is not necessarily going to be a fraction of a token. So in the case of documentation, I may have a lot more that I need to fit in my context, right? Also, code gets very complicated, right? So you've got braces, you've got extra special characters, you've got escape sequences. Those all need to be dealt with and trained on, right? So 32,000 tokens again, code stroll, 22 billion is actually about a 20 gig file. I think it's quantized to 5 in a GGUF or GGUF file that I use, right? So quantized to 5, normally it would be 8, again, for full quality. 5-bit values shrink the file to 20 gigs. And that is totally encapsulated. That is enough to run, basically on a workstation, your own fully capable Copilot, right? So anybody with these new ARM with Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite laptops with Windows and the Copilot features, if you've used them, they're great. But in my case, a little laptop is not always, it's not going to be enough for every coding solution, right? So these are code-specific models. Again, Llama 370 billion, which understands code quite a bit. Claude actually understands code quite a bit. But again, these are general purpose models, and they're not necessarily custom tailored to DevOps or platform engineering, right? If you ask Claude how to make a Packer manifest, it might know enough to get a manifest, but that's not specialty. So this is one reason I love code-specific languages. And these are updating all the time, right? So I used to think 4,000 tokens was a lot. Obviously, you hit the limit of 4,000 tokens, inference loses track of the beginning of the conversation, right? Or your code. If you slap a project into a 4,000 context model and you say, find my error, and there's 2 megs of code, right? That's never going to be coherent. The model will not make sense of that on the way out. Okay. 32,000 is getting up there. These proprietary models that are up to 2 million tokens, right? That is going to be very useful for writing code. Okay. So a reminder, completion is only text, right? Completion will continuously produce text, just like you say, hit the next word on a keyboard on your phone based on your chat history or your typing history. Reg adds extra data sources. And again, the demo that I saw 2 days ago at the LLM meetup in London, amazing. They had I think a 7 billion base model, and they had added on vector database trained on their catalog and their e-commerce app. The simple lightweight base database included everything translation, so you could ask it in Spanish, you could ask it in Greek, not just about products, but you could say sun irritation, and it will show you sunscreen, it will show you hats, it will show you, right? And then obviously you can ask the same question in Greek, and it will show you the same products, right? Or, the opposite question obviously was ice. How to deal with ice, and it brings boots with grippers and it brings ice chippers and everything out, right? This was a sporting goods place or something like that. So these are essentially replacing search engines, and not just replacing search engines, but like your local application search, right? So if you're a small retailer and you have a search bar and it's just a text database, that will be, I think, obsolete actually in a couple of years, because people will want to use this. You can literally talk to it in human language and it will just give you exactly what you need. Really brilliant. And it happens in milliseconds on private LLM. Okay. So RAG agents again, not just again building a custom model or adding a layer to an existing model, but agents make that extra bridge, make that step to the next bit of how do I automate this? How do I make this happen without my own intervention? Okay. So take a manual process for building again a Packer template. Now, what do? You branch code. If you have a repo, you create a branch for building the template. You select your requirements, or you maybe are provided the requirements. Check the latest documentation on Packer because it's probably changed if you haven't used it in a while. Build a first draft and then test it and test and validate until you are satisfied, right? And then eventually publish the image. So now I'll try this both with the public one with Grok and a local demo as well. But what I'm missing is this this swim lane, right? So this is what is actually happening in that process. A user, in this case, either me or someone that is asking me to build this will give me a criteria prompt, right? Model usually will ask for some data back. If I say type this into a GPT, like, oh, what, would you like to do this in a certain region in the cloud, or what parameters would it need? Like any good prompt will actually say, feel free to ask me for more details, right, in a chat session, because you need to be able to give it more details where things are missing. Otherwise, it will assume or it will hallucinate, right? So I'll go back and say selection. Maybe I say, yes, make this in Europe West 2. In this case, maybe output a URL. So go get the documentation, right, for the latest Packer. As soon as the context sees that, stop the context completion, have the web agent go out, fetch this URL, right, fetch the Packer documentation for maybe the AWS builder or whatever the latest is. The results will come back in from that essentially curl statement from that agent. The model can then analyze the HTML or the text output, output the code, produce the code, and then we can have essentially a shell agent or Packer build agent that validate the code, run the code, and then pass off the results as output, right? Now, a lot of this is still manual, right? And in the very near future, this will be fully automated. So let me again go to, first of all, Grok. I keep playing with Grok more and more now because it's really fun to test it out. So you get to select a model. By the way, we're not partners. There's no reward essentially in this for me demonstrating on Grok, or there is on Bedrock. We're an AWS partner, and anybody that wants that can talk to me as well. But Mixtral, okay, I've got Gemma 2. I really like Mixtral actually. So the 32,000 tokens, Mistral. Please, can you write me a template again? HashiCorp. Builds the latest Amazon Linux with full updates and a PCI DSS compliant. Use region, use London. I don't want to remember region codes, right? And of course, this is going to happen in 2 seconds, not even 2 milliseconds. Now, again, it did JSON, right? I didn't specify HCL. So I kind of get the age of this model a little bit more. So do that again. HCL and London region. HCL, I should be able to figure out HCL. There it is, variable region, you have EU West 2. See again, this is actually a closed model, right? So there's no multi-mode, there's no web agent that's going to go and get the latest. It just happens to know that EU West 2 is part of its training data, which is pretty good for a 7 billion model. Actually, that's pretty impressive. AWS AMI, this looks pretty good. But now where's my provisioner? How much should it actually do for PCI compliance? Nothing. Update, install Amazon Linux extras, right? Oh, okay. Install PCI DSS. What I would love to have it do, again, I'm going to fine tune this query again by rerunning it. So essentially using chat, but as completion. Please use OpenSCAP. This used to be one of my bread and butter things at Red Hat is installing compliant profiles, and then OpenSCAP automated all of it. So did it actually figure that out? I've not tried with this model yet. OpenSCAP, yeah, it sure did. Evaluates. I don't see an auto correct, so it will evaluate and save the profile. I don't think it will fix things, but that's a pretty good start. I'm impressed. Okay, so for an 8 billion model, that's a pretty good sign. Now let me try Bedrock. And again, I get to pick a little bit more from the model sense because I'm paying for that. Oh, that's an experiment with a RAG agent. This is my actual chat. So Claude 3 again. Try same prompt. Temperature is 1. I probably shouldn't do that. I would probably want to set that down. By default, they go to 1. Everybody hopefully knows that temperature is like the randomness. So if I crank that up, it might get a little bit crazy or hallucinate, or actually creative, I should say. If I leave it to 0, it will be direct and straightforward. So HCL, let's see, remediate there. So Claude figured it out, right? Claude made the last step and said, okay, not just evaluate. In fact, I don't even think it had to evaluate. It's going to remediate. So the last night's meetup was DevSecOps London in Google's offices, and somebody mentioned having this challenge. The customer, they say, well, challenge an AI to make me a machine that's PCI compliant, right? Well, look, this can happen, right? That's pretty good. Now, I don't see, yeah, okay, they're installing OpenSCAP. That looks pretty good. I would want to test that, but I'm impressed, right? Again, this is automating a lot of people's work. Again, so we've gone 3 phases. So I used to have to do some of this manually as part of gold image making in VMware Sense. I've also had a stage where tools like OpenSCAP and tools like Profile vendor software has automated things. And now we go a step further to where AI can even control that, right? And if you are familiar with the Kickstarts, I think recent Kickstart will enable you to actually build a profile like that automatically. As part of the install, right? Very handy. Now, there's just one example, right? If I go through Terraform again, I could have all kinds of different options. I think something is a little bit flaky with Bedrock. That warning popped up that there was a problem, and now it's a little bit on the fritz. But I'm in just the playground, right? Now, the beauty of this, again, you can do custom models here. You don't have to have your own hardware for it. I know a lot of people, in fact, well, you probably got access to plenty of hardware, so I'm not too worried about you. But a lot of these people who don't want to invest in their own, racks of NVIDIA kits, again, have access to a SaaS now. This is actually one of the super nice things about Bedrock is that they'll actually give you the hardware in a serverless model, right? And part of the advantage of inference, obviously, it's a read-only database, right? Read-only vector database or model. There it is again. That means you can load balance it really easy, right? That is by design, so that just like OpenAI can load balance 1,000 users on, I don't know how many users, probably more than 1,000 users on ChatGPT, you can do your own deployment using the same technology, right? The same auto scale groups. And if anybody has a challenge like that or has, again, a custom model that they either want help with or that they would like a solution with, okay, the stages of training our own private model, selecting a base model first, which is also part of the most important part, right? Because if you train for days and days and spend a lot of money on energy for a model and it's trained on a bad base model, your results are going to be useless, right? And I'm sure that some of these startups have thrown away a couple of models once they've come out of the oven, saying that they're inadequate. Right? Now, the fact that you can go here and customize a model. If anybody has played with these or is curious about how to use these, we have people in TerraSky that can assist with this. I can assist with this as well. And again, your own private model, if you're an air gap networker, can't use the cloud, we have options for that too. You know? Question. I think I've answered all the other questions. If anybody else has a question, feel free to type it in. One of the fun things, again, if you're in the Hugging Face community, these models are just, they're just all over the place. I'm actually planning to write a book on GGML. If anybody's familiar with GGUF and GGML, this is Yuri Yerganov in Bulgaria. This is the standard that he uses, right? So if you're trying out a model and you need a certain level of detail, again, I'm running currently only one V100 with 32 gigs of RAM. Normally I would run two and have access to 64 gigs of RAM. Those are all older hardware from NVIDIA, but they're perfectly valid for inference right now. They're actually really suitable to my own personal inferences development. But if you're load balancing in the cloud and you're selecting the right quantization level, think about a GPU with 8 gigs of RAM. Okay, maybe it doesn't sound very fast, but it's cheap. You might want to try a lower level detail, right? A lower quantization. But obviously, take a look at the very low quality, right? Low quality, you might get a lot of randomness and a lot of incoherent answers that don't make sense, right? Essentially, you're looking at a low resolution picture. In this case, you're looking at a low resolution model for LLMs, right? So 4 and 5, Q4 KM, typically what I use, Q4 or Q5 KM. Okay. Usually, if you can do that. I said it was 22 gigs. I was wrong. It's only 16 gigs, the one that I'm using, right? So think about planning your hardware. And I see another question I'll get to in a second. Think about planning your hardware. You need RAM for the quantization level of your model. And also, actually, depending on your hardware generation, that might not be the native way that it's stored. There's a great YouTube series out on quantization and how it's handled by different generations of hardware. The newest NVIDIA kit, the Ada series and the B100s, I believe, will do variable size vector math, right? So they'll actually have a 2-bit or a 4-bit native vector engine instead of essentially having to upscale. Everything is stored maybe as 4-bit, 5-bit, or FP8 or whatever the balance is, and then as it's computed, it has to be adjusted, it has to be blown up and essentially backfilled to the native 8-bit quantization, which is slowing things down, right? So if you do this in production, evaluate different generations of hardware, I can assist with that as well. Designing a private solution, I can assist with that. And again, language is pretty simple if it's razor focused. And again, this is just a model that we want to be able to code with. We don't need to know the capitals of every country or the population of every country. We don't need to know a lot of common knowledge that these models are trained on. We just need a code model, right? That's why I love these Code Llama. And let me go back and check out Code Llama again. Right, so 7B and 34B. I think this is actually cross-trained? Implement linked list in C++. Excellent. A lot of coders, students are now going to have a lot easier life being able to chat with a bot that understands C and C++ instead of going to a tutor, right? Interestingly, another business I used to do as a university, a tutor on C++. That business is now obsolete. Question. Yeah, sorry, Waleed. So we don't have access to custom models. No hardware. I assume you have all the hardware you need. I hear the investment going into Saudi right now is just insane. So, and also you're getting a lot of cloud regions down there too. So, yeah, I just heard like the newest HPC cluster and the newest NVIDIA spend in the Middle East is insane. They're doing a lot of building out there. Yeah, anybody that's curious about hardware, in fact, I have an event in 15 minutes that I'm supposed to kick off as well. I'm doing a similar talk with an informal group of friends at a meetup, and we do quizzes and give away prizes and such. And I have to pack up this kit actually to go do that. So I tell you what, I've had a lot of fun. Any more questions before we go? Move to Bahrain. Oh, you're Bahrain with AWS. Excellent. So yeah, you still got access to all that. Does AWS have a region in Bahrain now? That's interesting. That's news to me. It's probably been there for years and I didn't even realize. Sorry. Excellent, excellent. Any other questions before we go? Thank you, Waleed. You're the most interactive person in this group. Yeah. If anybody's curious, or if anybody, if I've made any mistakes, call me out. Feel free to let me know. I find that I'm still learning on the fly too. I had an assumption at this LLM meetup 2 days ago, and it turned out I was wrong. So excellent. Yeah, 5 years in the region for Bahrain. That figures. Okay. Well, very cool. We'll catch up later. I want to talk to you later, Waleed. Got some interesting things coming up. Cool. In the meantime, thank you again. Remember that TerraSky is an Amazon partner. We're a Microsoft partner. We're not a Google partner in the UK yet. I think we're a Google partner elsewhere and in the US. If anybody needs help with these tools again. And again, my specialty, I love to be in air-gapped mode. I don't like anything that I can't do on my own, because a lot of customers will ask me, how do I do this on my own without a SaaS? And it's a valid request. Okay. So thank you again. Back to this. Just would love to leave you with just a reminder again. TerraSky, we can help you with anything you saw here. And again, the use case, like having a custom model of RAG that essentially is your own search engine for your own product or your own portal or HR system, data sources, that is one of our specialties. So please get in touch if you have any questions about that. In the meantime, thank you. And again, this recording will come out soon as well. So take care and have a good day. Bye.